Hi, I'm PJ Garcia from Beach Pacific Escrow in Huntington Beach, California.
And I'm Genia Engelstad from Elite Escrow Services in San Diego, California.
And this is
Escrow Talk. That cracks me up whenever we
I know, every time we do it, you crack up.
I say that every time. Okay.
So what we want to talk about today is saying goodbye to the HUD and hello to the TRID.
Well, and I think PJ and I talked so much that we wanted to have this conversation, podcast, whatever you're going to call it, because we talk about this stuff all the time anyway, so we might as well just talk to people and whatever.
Okay. And it's a little frightening to hear our brains, sort of streaming, but bear with us. There are gold nuggets in those hills.
Okay, so I just want to say that one of the best things for me about being in any trade organization, whether it be CEA or EIC or whoever, is that I get to meet people like PJ Garcia, and they get to be my friend, and I get to pick up the phone and call them and say, do I have questions? And I think PJ is one of the most prolific, knowledgeable, accurate, wordy persons. Well, okay, you're less wordy than me about when it comes to escrow stuff, and I think that's really a cool thing about her. And that's one of the best things about the Escrow Institute, is that I get to be her friend and I get to talk to her about these things. And so PJ, what she does is she does newsletters, as I do in my office, but I usually link to PJ's newsletter. My office. But anyway, PJ wrote an article about, what did you call it? You called it Goodbye to the HUD.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what's the deal? What's the deal with the HUD?
Well, the HUD one has been around since the
1974?
Yes, that sounds about right. And it really HUD is, RESPA is actually the statute that the HUD 1 falls under.
Real Estate Settlements Procedures Act.
Correct.
Yes.
And it works hand in hand with the Truth in Lending Act,
which is TILA.
Right.
Yes.
Which was created not at the same time, but really both statutes were to give consumer protection.
Exactly.
Real estate purchasers.
So the whole time that you and I have been in escrow, our career, we have used the HUD 1 form.
Yes.
In the closing process when there was a lender involved.
Right. RESPA covers, and the HUD 1 is effective for pretty much any transaction on a 1 to 4 family residential property.
So we had some changes in our industry, our profession, in the last several years.
Well, let's talk about HUD really remained unchanged.
Yes.
The form and the regulation predominantly remained unchanged until 2010. In 2010, January 1st, we got a new form, and we saw the beginning of a morphing of the HUD 1 from a disbursement document to a disclosure document. It was still formally a disbursement document.
So the HUD 1 is all the financial things that happen in the transaction.
All the payments.
What the sales price is, what the loan amount is, what the fees are, all those kind of things are on that HUD 1 form. And then in 2010, we also started adding some lender disclosures, like how the fees compared at the beginning to end.
Correct.
Right?
And that's on the third page of, which is really taking some of that TILA disclosure documentation and pulling it over into the HUD. That's where I said it started to morph into a disclosure document. And then we had the mortgage crisis. Well, the mortgage crisis began obviously before 2010, but out of that came the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau under the Dodd-Frank Act, and that then led to a blending. One of the things in Dodd-Frank was they were tasked with merging the forms under TILA and RESPA.
Because the consumers, it was too much. So they felt like if they put them together, perhaps it would be a little
less confusing
and less paperwork, I'm putting a question mark with a puzzled look on my face there, right?
I see that puzzled look.
Okay.
And I raise you 2 question marks.
Okay.
So all this is supposed to be to benefit the consumer and to make it easier for them to understand the terms of loans. So theoretically, they wouldn't get into trouble as they did. So many of them did in the run up to the mortgage meltdown. That's a worthy aspirational goal. We'll see how it actually works out.
So what happened was, because of the Dodd-Frank Act, even though we retooled and we did a new HUD in 2010, so our HUD had pretty much been the same since 1974 till the year 2010, right?
Right.
So then in 2010, we changed the form, we changed all our computer systems, right? And then now...
We did training.
And now we have what's called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which came all out of the Dodd-Frank. And so now they have decided that we should have new forms.
Right. And the new forms are the new regulation is it's Truth in TILA RESPA Integrated Disclosure, TRID, which we always like to say is dirt backwards.
Dirt spelled backwards, yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So, and there are good things that come out of that. We're struggling at this point in the timeline. We were supposed to have an implementation date of August 1st.
Yes.
That has been delayed to October 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of escrow people, especially those that are engaged, had already been going to training, and we're pretty much feeling ready for August 1st. However, the CFPB decided that it wasn't true across the board, and a lot of lenders, because they had systems that had to be integrated and updated, that they weren't ready. And the big deal about TRID is, Gina, what's the big change that everybody needs to know about? The financial
change. Oh, she's asking me a question.
I'm asking
I didn't know the answer
penalties.
to. The penalties. I'm sorry. You asked me a question. I didn't know the answer, but it is the penalty. So really the two rules. RESPA is still there. TILA is still there. But what's happening is, if a lender doesn't comply with these things as they're supposed to, the CFPB can give everybody a big, ginormous penalty.
Yeah,
which they've already started doing with our friends at Wells Fargo. I don't know, Bank of America been hit with penalties. I don't know.
Well, maybe not under TRID. But everybody
big, huge penalties for not complying with the rules.
And I just want to say that a lot of this focuses around loan servicing. That's really where the focus has been to date, because that's where the market was focused. That's where the regulators were focused.
And if you look at the CFPB, and we're digressing and we're going to get in trouble for that.
I know.
But the CFPB has a thing on their website where they have taken into account, or they have added up all the kind of complaints that were made about consumer financing. And that's anything that affects a consumer. That is student loans, credit card loans,
payday lending,
auto
finance,
mortgages, auto finance and stuff. And really only 2% of the complaints, 2%, have been about mortgages. Which is kind of
new mortgages,
which is kind of fascinating, isn't it, when you look at those
numbers?
It is. But anyway, I morphed. So what we're doing now is we got rid of the old HUD. We're getting rid of it as of October 3rd. Any loan originated on or after October 3rd, 2015.
So if you provided the lender enough information to trigger the "I've applied for a loan" threshold, then you are subject to the new TRID guidelines.
Right. So for a while there, so if you have a loan originated on September 25th, you're going to still be using the old forms and the old disclosures.
So we'll be doing dual duty for a little while.
Side by side. So, but we're going to pretend it's October 3rd. We're using the new form. So now, instead of the good faith estimate,
we'll have a loan estimate.
And instead of using the HUD on a regular 1 to 4 loans, 1 to 4 family, we're going to use what's called the closing disclosure. We lovingly call it the CD, which is not that little round thing you put in the boombox, right, and play music.
Right, which is out of date now too.
Totally. So 1980. So maybe 1990. Okay, maybe it's 2000. I don't know. I don't know. Did they have it in 1980? I don't think so.
Yeah, they did.
They did? CDs?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, you're good.
Anyway, I was back.
But I'm old enough to remember
8-track
the
tapes.
big floppy drives and 8-track tapes.
8-track tapes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I remember vinyl records. I admit it. I have some in my house.
Me too.
Okay.
So now that we've established that Gina and I are old.
Totally digressed. So now we're going to have the CD form, right? It's called the closing disclosure. So, and it's going to replace those forms. And so, why do we care about this?
There's a plethora of changes.
I love that word, plethora.
I know, it's one of those words that just feels fun to say. So if you go to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau website, they have a lot to say about what is going on and what they've done. And that website, just type in Know Before You Owe or CFPB in your browser, and you'll get that. Before You Owe is...
not N-O.
No, it's
K-N-O.
K-N-O, because they want consumers to know before they owe. So that's how they've branded their marketing campaign to consumers on this. They did a lot of testing of the forms, and they feel, I don't know that I necessarily agree with them, but they feel that these forms in their consumer testing are more understandable for consumers, and they're better educated and therefore better decision makers about which terms are best for them. And in other words, interest rate, term of the loan, prepayment penalties, everything combined, what makes the best loan for them.
Well, the challenge is with the new form is that, many of us in California, we gave people the HUD-1 form because it was a lender requirement, not because necessarily that consumers understood the form and the contents. They
really actually looked at our closing, which is a simple debit credit statement.
Right.
They would look at that, and we'd show them both. They'd focus on ours because that's where it's easy to read in a linear fashion all the costs associated with the transaction.
And unfortunately, the closing disclosure now has the components kind of the HUD with all the fees on it, but it also has a lot of lender information on it, which kind of leads to the problem of who's supposed to be filling that out, because we're not lenders, are we, PJ?
It is now, note in the name, it is a disclosure. They don't make any pretense now about this being a settlement statement. Mm-hmm. Although there's still, I think, even some confusion in the minds of some of the CFPB staff about that fact. It is a loan disclosure and therefore is not in the purview of the escrow or settlement agent. However, they did leave some wiggle room where they left room in the regulation that said that the escrow or settlement agents could participate in assisting the lender with the preparation of that document. That was a little bit of a heartburn for us because I don't think we have any business writing a disclosure document for the lender. It appears that in light of the strictness of the timing requirements and the major penalties that are on the lender if they get it wrong, that the major lenders have already come out and said they're going to prepare and deliver it themselves. Because the delivery, it's not only the accuracy of the form, it's the timing of the delivery.
And so we're going to be talking about this as we go forward more. So we're not going to talk about the details about the delivery, but probably a little bit we are. But we just want to make sure that people understand that this is a big deal. I mean, I don't think that we're going to stop and, it's not going to be the moment, living in infamy. Of course it's not. We're not going to compare it to that. But it is a big change in the way we've done business since 1974.
It's a process change. Absolutely. Right. And the process change starts at the moment the contract the offer is written. Right. So we need our real estate partners to understand these changes at a fundamental level and write their contracts in a manner that's going to be successful under these timing guidelines.
Because there's timing guidelines up front. The buyer has, the consumer, we have different words now.
Right.
The consumer, which is the buyer, has so many days to review the loan product to make sure that they're fine with it. And the lender can't incur any costs during those specific time days until the buyer says he has what is it called, the intent to proceed.
Correct.
And then you have time frames in the real estate contract in California for appraisal contingencies and loan contingencies, which are really tight today. I mean, I think we're working in kind of tight time frames.
We are.
And then at the end of the transaction, you have the buyer has to receive
The closing disclosure.
3 days before consummation.
And 3 days can equal 7 days.
I love when Penny Reed from Wells Fargo says that. 3 days equals 7 days.
And the reason is there's a delivery requirement, and if the lender takes the most conservative delivery option, which is mail, U.S. mail, they have to put it in the mail on day one, wait 3 days to assume the consumer received it, then wait 3 more days for the consumer to have their review period. Then they can execute the loan documents. Now, in a state where you do roundtable closings and everybody sits around and sings Kumbaya and passes keys and money, that's the closing. In California and escrow states, even though it's now referred to as consummation by the CFPB, that isn't the closing date, because in California the contracts all go by recording date. So that could be several, and currently is anywhere from 1 to 3 days later.
So this lender, really what they need to do is they need to give the buyer the closing disclosure, and the buyer doesn't have to necessarily, I'm assuming the lender's going to go over it with them, but all really the buyer has to do is say, yes, I've received it, and then they have 3 days to review it after that before they can sign.
And the nice thing for us is we're hoping that the lender will also deliver at least a draft version of the loan document, so that the consumer, the buyer, also has the opportunity to review all those documents and ask all their questions of the appropriate person, which is the lender.
Well, and I don't think, as we sit through thousands of closings, where people come in and sign loan documents and stuff, and I just don't see that the Regulation Z and the closing statement are the things that people have the most questions about, which is what the CFPB wants to give them the 3 days to look at.
Right.
I just don't see that. I don't.
Well, right now we get a stack of papers to put in front of people, and when you stack on the federal and state regulatory requirements and then the investor overlays of documentation that's needed, it gets sometimes to be quite funny when you're going and passing a buyer the same document 3 or 4 times, effectively the same document and the same disclosure, with for fitting a different purpose and with a slightly different title.
So I think it's important for us to, urge, if we find on the street, on the ground, that it's not working the way it should, we should be talking to our realtors, who should be talking to CAR, who should be talking to NAR, who can voice these concerns that it's not really working on the street the way the intent was.
Well, maybe. And we hope it will, but we just don't know. There's a lot of assumption being made. I think if the consumers are delivered the documents at the same time as the closing disclosure, they can have mom and dad look at it, they can have their attorney look at it, they can have Aunt Sarah look at it, whoever they feel comfortable with. Because everybody in this state knows somebody who's a realtor, an escrow, or a title, or a lender, right? And everybody knows somebody. So they can have that opportunity to let everybody they want look at it and make sure they're comfortable with it, happy with it, ask all the questions before they get to our office, where they're going to sign on the dotted line and get ready to move forward and close that transaction.
So what we want to say in closing is that timing's critical, so we need to pay attention. The CFPB themselves have said that, or their timeline, if you look on their website, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, they have said that, even if everything goes great and it's all butterflies and sunshine, it may be 38 days to get a transaction closed.
So today, the 3 to 4 week closings of today are gone for a while.
I don't think forever.
Not forever, especially if we get electronic signatures in place, but it will take some time for everybody to acclimate to these new things and get comfortable with them. and get the guidance we need. Whenever there's a new regulation put out, it's never perfect, and there's always a lot of tweaking and guidance.
Right.
Because remember, this is being written by bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., where they know how they do closings on the East Coast, but they really don't know much about how California does them. And they've never sat at a closing, except unless it was their own, and they were probably, just as baffled as every other consumer doing that.
So what we need to do is communicate. We need to communicate with our realtors. We need to communicate with our clients. We need to communicate with the lender. All of us need to have an idea of where everybody is. So the buyers can't be going on vacation, or if they are, they need to let everybody know.
Yeah, communication and collaboration are critical. Also, I want to say managing expectations. That's one of the biggies.
That's yours.
We need to manage expectations. Real estate agents need to manage the expectations of their seller and buyers. Lenders need to manage everybody's expectations. Buyer, realtor.
And I think
we need to manage everybody's expectations, because if the expectations are not unrealistic, everybody will end up happy.
So when you say that, you don't think that we need to say something because we're happy to make everyone happy.
Exactly.
You think we need to say what's really the truth of the matter.
Yeah, we need to lose all the happy, sunshine and rainbows. Yeah, we can do this, no problem, and say, look, here's the reality.
Because I think that people, I think they respond better to that. I think people are happier if you can close sooner than to say, it's 30 days and you're now at 45 days.
Yeah, they're always happier if you exceed expectations rather than miss expectations. And there are consumer complaints on the website. So this is a really important point. We want to be managing expectations.
I think that's
pretty much it for today. We're out of time.
All right, guys.
So we'll be talking about this more as we go forward. But in the meantime, thank you for being with us today
on Escrow Talk.